I grew up in Seattle with dreams of changing the technology world. From my apartment, I built a startup that eventually grew into a multi-million-dollar company. My best friend Jason became my business partner, sharing every moment of our rise to success. We were inseparable, unstoppable, or so I thought. What I never expected was how he would steal everything I built, leaving me with nothing but revenge burning in my heart. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are tuning in from and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more stories about business betrayal and sweet revenge. Growing up in a small town just outside of Seattle, I never imagined I would one day be at the center of the tech industry. My name is Rodney, and technology was always my escape. While other kids played sports, I dismantled computers and rebuilt them with improvements. My parents worked blue-collar jobs and could barely afford the second-hand parts I begged for at garage sales, but they supported my passion, even when they did not understand it. When I earned a scholarship to study computer science at the University of Washington, it felt like the universe was finally acknowledging my dedication. The campus was enormous compared to my high school, and for the first few weeks, I kept to myself, spending hours in the computer lab rather than socializing. That all changed during my second semester, when I was paired with Jason Wilson for a programming project. Jason was everything I was not: confident, charismatic, from a wealthy Seattle family. And though he was studying the same major, he approached it from a completely different angle. While I obsessed over elegant code and technical challenges, Jason saw the business potential in everything we learned. During our first meeting in the campus coffee shop, we talked for 6 straight hours, sketching app ideas on napkins until the baristas asked us to leave at closing time. We complement each other perfectly. Jason said that night, his eyes bright with excitement. "You build it, I sell it. Together we could actually make something real here, not just another class project." That night marked the beginning of what would become ByteForge, though we would not officially name our company until 2 years later. After graduation, while our classmates accepted cushy jobs at established tech firms, Jason convinced me to take a risk. We moved into a tiny apartment with barely enough room for our computers, living on instant noodles and energy drinks while coding through the night. Our first app was a simple tool for restaurants to manage online orders. We built it in 3 months, and Jason somehow talked 5 local restaurant owners into using it for free as a test case. Watching real customers interact with my code was thrilling in a way I had never experienced before. The early days were brutally difficult. We were rejected by 27 investors before anyone would even listen to our full pitch. There were nights I found Jason asleep on our office floor, investor presentations scattered around him. I would step over him, sit at my desk, and continue coding until sunrise. We were hungry in every sense of the word, and that hunger bonded us like brothers. When we finally secured our first investment of $500,000 from a small angel investor named Marcus Blackwell, Jason and I celebrated by splurging on an actual dinner at one of the restaurants using our app. I still remember the toast Jason made, raising his glass with tears in his eyes. "To Rodney, the genius behind everything we are building. I am just the mouthpiece, but you are the heart and soul of ByteForge." Those words meant everything to me. Finally, someone recognized my talents, saw my potential. That night I told Jason about my algorithm idea, something I had been privately developing that would revolutionize how our software processed user data. His eyes widened as I explained the technical details, and though I knew he only understood about half of what I was saying, his enthusiasm was genuine. 6 months later, we moved into our first real office space, a modest suite in downtown Seattle, with enough room for the 5 employees we had managed to hire. Our team was small but incredible. Maria, our first hire, was a brilliant developer who understood my code almost as well as I did. Then came Derek, a UX designer whose interfaces made our products intuitive in ways I never considered. Thomas handled our server infrastructure, while Sarah and Kyle managed customer relationships and marketing. I spent 18-hour days perfecting my algorithm, often sleeping under my desk rather than going home. Jason would bring me fresh clothes and force me to eat something besides vending machine snacks. When I finally completed the first working version, it performed even better than I had hoped. Our processing speed increased by 700%, and the predictive capabilities were unlike anything on the market. As ByteForge grew, so did my friendship with Jason. He became more than a business partner. He was the best man at my wedding when I married Amanda, and 2 years later I became the godfather to his son Michael. Our families spent holidays together, and during company retreats we would stay up late sharing our visions for the future over whiskey. Jason gradually became the public face of ByteForge. He had a natural gift for explaining complex technology in ways that made investors and clients lean forward in their chairs, eager to be part of what we were building. Meanwhile, I was happiest in the background, leading our growing development team and continuing to refine our technology. We had found our perfect balance, and business was booming. By our 5th year, we had expanded to 38 employees and were on track to break 8 figures in annual revenue. Technology blogs wrote articles about the ByteForge phenomenon, and larger competitors began circling with acquisition offers. Through it all, Jason and I remained a united front. At least, that is what I believed. The first hairline fracture in our partnership appeared after we closed our second funding round. $2 million from Westridge Capital was a major milestone, one that should have brought us closer together in celebration. Instead, I noticed Jason starting to create distance between us in subtle ways. It began with investor meetings I was not invited to attend. When I asked about my absence, Jason placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled that charismatic smile that had won over so many clients. "These guys get nervous around too much technical talk, Rodney. I need you focused on development right now. That is where you shine, remember? Besides, it is just boring financial stuff." I trusted him, so I nodded and returned to my code. The algorithm needed optimization for our growing user base, and that was genuinely where my passion lay. But a week later, while looking for a shared document, I discovered Jason had created a separate company email account I did not have access to. When I mentioned it casually over lunch, he explained it away as a specialized account for sensitive investor communications. "Just trying to keep your inbox clear of the financial noise," he said, but something in his tone felt rehearsed. The following month, I overheard a conversation that sent a chill down my spine. I was working late as usual, and most of the office had cleared out. Jason was in the conference room with the door partially open, speaking on the phone. Assuming he was alone, I approached to ask a question about our upcoming product release. "The algorithm is my breakthrough innovation," I heard him say. "Yes, of course, I understand how it works. I designed it from the ground up." I froze outside the door, my question forgotten. Jason continued, unaware of my presence. "Rodney is a good coder, but this level of innovation comes from me. He implements my vision." My hands began to shake. I retreated to my office without making a sound, trying to rationalize what I had heard. Perhaps he was simplifying for investors who would not understand our partnership dynamic. Maybe this was just part of the sales pitch. I wanted to believe the best about my friend, but something had shifted. New hires started coming in without my input. Where once we had jointly interviewed every potential team member, Jason began bringing in people who reported directly to him. These newcomers treated me with professional courtesy, but looked to Jason for final approval on everything. During meetings, I noticed they would wait for his subtle nod before agreeing with any of my technical directions. When I finally confronted Jason about my concerns, we were alone in his office after hours. His response left me more unsettled than before. "You are being paranoid, Rodney. Success is getting to you. Remember who believed in you when nobody else did. Remember who got us here." He laughed and added, "Next you will be telling me I am trying to steal your precious algorithm." The way he said it, with a dismissive wave of his hand, made me feel small and irrational. He managed to make my valid concerns sound like the delusions of an unstable mind. I left his office questioning myself more than him. Product changes began coming down without technical justification. Jason would email the development team, directly copying me as an afterthought, with demands for features that would require substantial rewrites of stable systems. When I pushed back, explaining the technical debt we would incur, he would override me in front of the team. "We need to move fast. Our competitors are not sitting around debating code elegance." My authority with the development team eroded gradually. Even Maria, once my most loyal colleague, began implementing Jason's requested changes without consulting me first. Reviewing the company finances, which I still had access to as co-founder, I discovered unusual expenses. Consulting fees to companies I had never heard of, executive retreats I had not been invited to, and a separate research division operating under Jason's direct supervision. Then came the new executives. Jason began hiring his college friends for newly created positions with impressive titles and salaries significantly higher than our existing team members. Thomas, our loyal infrastructure engineer, was suddenly reporting to Jason's fraternity brother, who had minimal technical experience but a Stanford MBA. During this time, I noticed Jason meeting frequently with Marcus Blackwell, our original investor. They would use the small conference room, close the blinds, and emerge hours later with handshakes and knowing smiles. When I asked about these meetings, Jason claimed they were discussing potential acquisition offers that were not yet ready for the wider leadership team. My wife, Amanda, was the first to name what was happening. Over dinner one night, after listening to my confused recounting of another bewildering day, she put down her fork and looked me directly in the eyes. "Rodney, he is pushing you out. Jason is systematically isolating you from the company you built together." I denied it, vehemently defending Jason, despite my growing unease. We had been through too much together. He would never betray me like that. But Amanda's words haunted me, especially when the following week I discovered legal documents with what appeared to be my signature on them. Documents I had never seen, much less signed. The killing blow came while I was out of town, visiting my mother, who had been diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. Jason knew about her condition and had been supportive, insisting I take all the time I needed with family. What I did not know was that he had scheduled an emergency board meeting during my absence. I learned about it from Maria, who called me while I sat in the hospital waiting room. "Rodney, something weird just happened." There was a board meeting, and afterward Jason announced a corporate restructuring. He said you had agreed to it while focusing on family matters. My blood ran cold. What kind of restructuring? Her hesitation told me everything before she even spoke. The company has been reorganized under a new holding structure. Jason has controlling interest now. I thought you knew. I flew back to Seattle that night, leaving my sister to look after our mother. When I arrived at the office the next morning, the atmosphere had changed palpably. Employees avoided eye contact and conversations stopped when I entered rooms. I headed straight for Jason's office, only to find him in a meeting with people I did not recognize. Over the next week, key team members began resigning. Maria was first, followed by Derek and Thomas. They offered vague explanations about new opportunities, but would not meet my eyes during their exit interviews. 2 weeks later, I discovered through a LinkedIn update that all three were now working for a new company called AlgoCore, registered to Jason's home address. The next blow came from the patent office. As part of routine IP monitoring, I received an alert about a new patent filing that referenced technology similar to our core algorithm. The patent was filed solely under Jason's name, with no mention of ByteForge or my contributions. When I downloaded the full application, I found entire sections lifted directly from my technical documentation, now claimed as Jason's sole intellectual property. That same afternoon, I discovered a draft press release on our shared marketing drive, announcing Jason as the founder and sole innovator behind ByteForge's revolutionary technology. The document had been created by our PR team with a planned release date for the following week. I printed the patent application and press release and marched into Jason's office without knocking. He was on a call but motioned for me to sit. I remained standing, throwing the papers onto his desk. "What is this?" I demanded once he hung up. "You are stealing my algorithm." Jason's transformation was complete in that moment. The friendly mask dropped, revealing a coldness I had never seen before. He stood slowly, straightening his custom-tailored suit. "Your algorithm. Everything created under ByteForge is company property, and as majority shareholder, I make decisions about company property." His voice was clinical, devoid of our years of friendship. "You should be thanking me. I took your little coding project and made it valuable." Something inside me snapped. 20 years of being underestimated, of having my technical brilliance overshadowed by more confident, charismatic people. 5 years of pouring my soul into ByteForge, of trusting Jason with my dreams. I lunged across the desk and grabbed him by his expensive collar. Security was called. 2 men I did not recognize from a security firm I had never approved hiring physically removed me from the building while employees watched in shocked silence. My access badge was confiscated, and I was informed I would be contacted by company attorneys. That night I discovered my email access had been revoked. My company laptop failed to connect to our servers. Phone calls to board members went straight to voicemail. In less than 24 hours, I had been completely severed from the company I had built. The media coverage began the next day. Technology blogs ran stories about my emotional breakdown and erratic behavior. Sources close to the company described me as a temperamental coding savant who had become increasingly unstable as ByteForge grew. Jason was portrayed as the steady leader who had been protecting the company from my volatility for years. Within a week, our biggest client, Tech Dynamics, announced an exclusive partnership with AlgoCore, Jason's new venture. The press release praised Jason's innovative approach and made no mention of ByteForge or my contributions to the technology. My financial situation deteriorated rapidly. My salary stopped, and my stock options were frozen pending legal review. Savings that had seemed substantial quickly dwindled under the weight of mounting legal fees as I tried to fight back against Jason's takeover. Amanda stood by me taking extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse to help cover our mortgage payments. Friends stopped calling. Industry contacts who had once eagerly sought my technical insights now politely declined my meeting requests. Several suggested I take some time to focus on my mental health, clearly influenced by the narrative Jason had crafted. My identity had been so thoroughly intertwined with ByteForge that its loss left me hollow. I spent days staring at my home computer screen, unable to write a single line of code. The joy had been stripped from the one thing that had always given my life meaning. 3 months after being forced out with our savings nearly depleted and foreclosure notices arriving, I hit my breaking point. Alone in our apartment while Amanda worked a night shift, I sat on the floor surrounded by old notebooks filled with the original algorithm sketches. I had given everything to ByteForge to Jason, and now I had nothing. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Inside was a cease and desist notice from ByteForge's attorneys, demanding I stop using or referencing any code concepts or ideas related to the company's proprietary technology. They claimed all my work, even conceptual work done before the company existed, belonged to ByteForge under the terms of agreements I supposedly signed. That same day, the latest issue of Tech Innovator magazine arrived. Jason's face graced the cover, under the headline, "The Visionary Reshaping Data Processing." In the featured interview, he described himself as the architect of ByteForge's breakthrough algorithm and expressed relief at finally being recognized for his innovations. Something broke inside me. I sat on my kitchen floor, surrounded by bills and legal threats, reading Jason take credit for my life's work. Years of friendship of building something together reduced to this betrayal. I did not shower or eat for 3 days. Amanda found me in the same spot when she returned from a double shift, still clutching the magazine. "This is not you," she said, helping me to my feet. "The Rodney I married fights back. He does not give up." Her words barely registered through my haze of despair. I had lost everything that defined me professionally. My reputation was in tatters, my creation stolen, my future, in the industry I loved, seemingly over. The unexpected turning point came from Eli, a former intern, who had worked directly under me at ByteForge. He contacted me through Amanda, asking to meet at a coffee shop far from the ByteForge offices. "Jason has been planning this for over a year," Eli told me nervously, glancing around the half-empty cafe. "He started isolating your contributions right after the second funding round. He would take your code, rewrite small portions, and present it to the board as his innovation." Eli had been tasked with organizing the company's cloud storage and had discovered folders of my original work with modified timestamps and Jason's name on the documentation. He had kept quiet out of fear for his own position, but had finally quit 2 weeks earlier. "There is something else," Eli said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Before I left, I backed up some of the server logs and documentation repositories. Jason does not understand how your algorithm actually works. The new implementation at AlgoCore has serious security flaws." That night after Eli left, I plugged in the drive. It contained evidence of systematic fraud emails, discussing how to cut me out of ByteForge financial records, showing Jason had been funneling company funds into his personal accounts, and most damning of all documentation proving he had presented my algorithm to venture capitalists as his own creation months before the board meeting. More importantly, the drive contained technical documentation for AlgoCore's implementation of my algorithm. As I reviewed the code snippets, I realized Eli was right. Jason's team had fundamentally misunderstood key security aspects of my design. They had created a working version that processed data efficiently but left client information vulnerable to relatively simple breach techniques. A week later, I heard from another former colleague that Westridge Capital was growing concerned about AlgoCore's ability to deliver on Jason's promises. During a demonstration for potential clients, the system had crashed when attempting to process the volume of data Jason had claimed it could handle. Without understanding the underlying architecture, his team was unable to identify the bottleneck. Industry rumors began circulating about instability in AlgoCore's product. A client had reported data inconsistencies, and Jason's technical team was struggling to address the issues. Customer satisfaction ratings were plummeting, and Tech Dynamics, their flagship client, was expressing frustration with missed deadlines. I stood at a crossroads. I could walk away, start over in a new industry, and try to forget the betrayal. Or I could fight back using Jason's technical incompetence against him. The choice crystallized one morning when I saw an announcement for the upcoming Northwest Technology Summit, where Jason was scheduled to give a keynote presentation on the future of algorithmic data processing. That day, I began methodically organizing the evidence from Eli's drive. I created a detailed timeline of Jason's fraudulent activities cross-referenced with company milestones and funding events. I analyzed the security vulnerabilities in AlgoCore's implementation and documented exactly how client data was at risk. I contacted Sarah Carter, an attorney specializing in intellectual property and fraud cases, who agreed to review my evidence. After 3 days of examination, she confirmed what I already knew: I had a strong case for intellectual property theft, fraud, and corporate malfeasance. "This is not just about getting justice for yourself," she said during our meeting. "There are serious securities fraud implications here that could interest federal investigators." With legal guidance, I reached out to Marcus Blackwell, our original investor. Initially hesitant to even take my call, he agreed to a meeting after I mentioned potential securities fraud that could affect his investment. Over lunch in a private dining room, I presented the evidence, methodically focusing on the financial implications rather than my personal grievances. "Jason told me you had agreed to a reduced role," Marcus said, his expression darkening as he reviewed the documents. "He said you were burned out and wanted to focus on technical work without business responsibilities." Marcus had been misled just like everyone else. As an investor with a fiduciary duty to his fund, he was particularly concerned about the security vulnerabilities and financial misrepresentations. With renewed purpose, I began developing an improved version of my original algorithm. Working 18-hour days in our spare bedroom, I addressed inefficiencies in my previous design and enhanced the security protocols. After 3 weeks of intensive work, I had created a prototype that outperformed even ByteForge's implementation, let alone AlgoCore's flawed version. Through Marcus, I reconnected with several former team members who had become disillusioned with AlgoCore. They confirmed my suspicions about the technical problems plaguing Jason's company and provided additional inside information about upcoming product releases and client concerns. Using encrypted communication channels, I established contact with a handful of loyal employees still at ByteForge who had been uncomfortable with my ouster. They became my eyes and ears inside the company, keeping me informed of internal developments while I built my case. 2 days before the Northwest Technology Summit, I sent anonymous tips to 3 respected technology journalists about security vulnerabilities in AlgoCore's platform, including specific technical details that could be verified independently. Within hours, articles appeared questioning the security of AlgoCore's implementation, sending ripples of concern through their client base. The final piece fell into place when Tech Dynamics experienced exactly the type of data breach I had warned about in my anonymous tip. Customer information was exposed, and their security team traced the vulnerability directly to AlgoCore's implementation of the processing algorithm. Jason was summoned to an emergency meeting with Tech Dynamics executives, but was unable to explain the technical issue or provide a timeline for resolution. As Jason took the stage at the Northwest Technology Summit, his company was in crisis. Tech Dynamics had publicly announced they were re-evaluating their partnership, and 3 other clients had suspended their contracts pending security reviews. Jason appeared haggard, his usual confidence noticeably diminished as he began his keynote. I waited until he was halfway through his presentation before walking into the auditorium. The murmurs began immediately as attendees recognized me. Jason faltered mid-sentence when he saw me take a seat in the front row. When the moderator opened the floor for questions, I was the first to approach the microphone. The room fell silent as I identified myself as ByteForge's co-founder and the original creator of the algorithm Jason had been discussing. "I have a technical question about your implementation," I said calmly. "Can you explain how you have addressed the quaternary encryption vulnerability inherent in the distributed processing framework?" Jason's face paled. It was a legitimate question that any creator of the algorithm should be able to answer, but I knew he could not. He stammered through a non-response filled with buzzwords but lacking substance. From my briefcase, I produced copies of my original design documentation with timestamps predating ByteForge's formation, along with evidence of Jason's fraud. I handed them to the moderator and the 3 technology journalists in the front row. "I believe the audience and your investors would be interested in reviewing these materials," I said. My voice was steady, my purpose clear. Before Jason could respond, a representative from the Securities and Exchange Commission approached the stage, flanked by 2 federal agents. The investigation I had quietly initiated through Sarah Carter had progressed faster than anticipated. "Jason Wilson, we need to speak with you regarding allegations of securities fraud and misappropriation of intellectual property." As Jason was escorted from the stage, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before the industry he had sought to conquer, I felt no joy. Only a grim satisfaction that truth had finally emerged. By the following morning, AlgoCore's stock had plummeted 87%. ByteForge's board called an emergency meeting, and by afternoon I had been asked to return as Chief Technology Officer to address the technical issues Jason's leadership had created. The legal battle lasted 14 months. Jason faced 8 federal charges ranging from wire fraud to securities violations. ByteForge's board voted unanimously to remove him and restore my position as co-founder and technical lead. The patents were corrected to properly credit my work, and a public statement acknowledged the company's failure to protect my intellectual property rights. Most of the team members who had followed Jason to AlgoCore reached out asking to return to ByteForge. I rehired those who had been manipulated or coerced, but declined to bring back those who had actively participated in the fraud. We needed to rebuild with a foundation of integrity. With renewed purpose, I restructured ByteForge's governance to prevent any similar situation in the future. No single person, including myself, would have unchecked authority over the company's direction. We implemented transparent decision-making processes and equity distribution that recognized the contributions of our entire team. The industry recognition I had never sought now came my way. Technology publications wrote about my algorithmic innovations and resilience in the face of corporate betrayal. But the accolades felt hollow compared to the satisfaction of seeing ByteForge return to its original mission and values. The emotional recovery proved far more challenging than the professional resurrection. Trust, once shattered, does not easily reform. I approached new business relationships with caution that sometimes bordered on paranoia. Amanda suggested therapy, and though initially resistant, I eventually found value in processing the betrayal with a professional. During this period of recovery, I discovered an unexpected calling as a mentor to young entrepreneurs. My experience had given me insight into both the technical and human aspects of building a company. I began hosting monthly dinners for promising developers, sharing lessons about protecting their intellectual property and choosing partners wisely. "Your technical brilliance means nothing if you do not protect it," I would tell them. And no legal agreement can fully substitute for a partner's integrity. As ByteForge grew stronger than before, I worked to rebuild my personal foundations as well. Amanda and I purchased a house outside the city, creating distance between work and home that helped me develop a healthier relationship with my career. We started a family, welcoming our daughter Emma, whose existence reminded me daily that my value extended far beyond my professional achievements. 3 years after the confrontation at the Technology Summit, ByteForge's valuation exceeded our highest projections under Jason's leadership. We had developed a reputation not just for technical excellence, but for ethical business practices that attracted both talent and clients who shared our values. I look back now on those dark days after Jason's betrayal with a perspective I could not have imagined then. The pain was necessary for my growth, forcing me to recognize warning signs I had ignored and teaching me to value myself beyond my technical contributions to the world. The greatest lesson was not about business or technology, but about human nature. I had believed Jason's charm and confidence were complementary to my technical abilities, never recognizing how those same qualities could become weapons when wielded without moral constraints. Today, ByteForge stands as a testament not to my algorithm or Jason's betrayal, but to the power of integrity in an industry often lacking it. We have declined acquisition offers from larger companies whose values do not align with ours, choosing instead to grow organically and maintain our commitment to both technical excellence and ethical conduct. Jason served 16 months in a minimum security prison before being released. I heard he found work as a sales consultant for a small software company in another state. I feel no need to track his progress or wish him ill. The energy once consumed by anger now fuels innovation and mentorship instead. The algorithm that began this journey continues to evolve its applications, extending beyond what I originally envisioned. But I no longer define myself by its success or my role as its creator. I am more than my code, more than ByteForge, more than the sum of my professional achievements. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me ultimately freed me from the narrow identity I had constructed for myself. In losing everything I thought mattered, I discovered what truly does. Have you ever experienced betrayal that eventually led to unexpected growth? Share your story in the comments below. If this tale of tech treachery and triumphant comeback resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of resilience in the business world. Remember, sometimes your greatest setback becomes your most powerful setup for success. Thank you for listening, and until next time, guard your innovations and choose your partners wisely.